Hi, this is Brad Straley with Jacksonville For Life. Today we have with us Brian Kelly with the law firm Shortstein Kelly. Brian, thanks for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It is our pleasure. We want to talk about adoption today, and I know there's more than one kind of adoption. Can you explain the different kinds and how they work and how they're different?
Sure. What we do is newborn domestic adoption. Most of the cases that we handle are where we actually match the birth mother with prospective adoptive parents. We have many adoptive parents that are waiting to have a child. The birth mother actually selects the adoptive family, meets them, and that's a semi-open adoption. We do everything other than identify last names and exact location. So that's the main kind of adoption that you see these days. There are some birth mothers that still choose closed adoption where we pick the family and they don't want to have any contact, but those are rare. And then there are identified adoptions where a birth mother comes in to meet us the first time and she's already selected her own adoptive parents, family, friends, or neighbors, or the like. But those are the main types that we do. We also do family adoptions where grandparents adopt the child, step-parent adoptions as well.
Great. Now, I was reading on your website that you've been helping birth parents and adoptive families since 1992. How many families do you think you've been able to assist in all that time?
Between my partner and I, 1992 is when we started the firm, a little over 3,200.
Wow. That is a blessing. You keep in contact with them years down the road?
Oh, yeah. The adoptive parents are required to provide pictures and updates for the birth mother for 18 years. And so, yeah, we keep up with them. We even get now, we're so old, we get high school graduation pictures of adoptees, college graduation pictures, so it's really, really cool.
That's nice. I know some of our prior guests with the Homes for Unwed Mothers that the mothers come back and then those little babies come back as adults, and they always seem to get a real kick out of that. I imagine the adoption laws in Florida have changed since 1992.
Dramatically.
For the good?
Oh, yeah, for the good. It used to be crazy difficult, and the adoption statute has been amended over the years to now where Florida is one of the most adoption-friendly states in the United States.
That is good to hear. So the one of the services you discussed earlier were for the birth mothers. What kind of rights does the birth mother have?
Well, a birth mother can't sign the necessary documents in order to make adoption possible until the baby's born. That was one of the things that was debated upon in rewriting the statute. A number of people wanted a revocation period where they can actually change their mind after they've already signed a consent. Mm-hmm. Many states have that. And what we did was compromise in Florida, and we have a waiting period as opposed to a revocation period. So a birth mother has to wait 48 hours from the time of birth or until the day her doctor has written a medical discharge that she can be released from the hospital. Either one of those things, whichever happens first, then she's eligible to sign the consent.
Interesting. Is the birth mother required to pay any legal fees or expenses to you guys?
No. Everything is paid for by the adoptive parents. We represent the adoptive parents. Mm-hmm. The adoptive parents, according to Florida law, are also allowed to pay the birth mother's living expenses, her normal living expenses, rent, food, utilities, and the like, during the course of the pregnancy, plus a 6-week period after birth.
Now, who normally contacts you? Is it the one of the birth parents, or is it the adoptive family, or?
Well, we maintain a list of adoptive parents ourselves, where adoptive parents call us, but we're small. There's 2 lawyers, and so there's a lot of education that has to go into preparing adoptive parents to get into the adoption process. So we use adoption consultants all around the country, mainly Christian adoption consultants that we deal with that have locations all across the country that have families that are waiting that they've already educated. So typically what happens is a birth mother contacts us And then she comes into the office, and that first meeting is about an hour and a half with either Michael or myself, where we just explain the entire process to her, how living expenses work, what families have to go through in order to become adoptive parents. We discuss the birth father and who he is and what, how we're going to handle that, whether or not they have Medicaid and how to help them get covered by Medicaid. Then we don't make a second appointment when we want them to just go think about this. We tell them, go home, think about it, pray about it, and if this is what you want to do and you want to do it with us, then come back. And then the second meeting is about 2.5 hours, where they meet with us again. We sign some preliminary documents. We fine-tune the budget. We talk mainly about characteristics of adoptive parents and what she's looking for in a family. And then she meets with our social worker for about another hour to go through a birth parent interview, to go through what adoption entails, alternatives to adoption, and that's required by Florida law. Every birth mother has to have at least one counseling session with a licensed social worker before she can embark on an adoption plan. But then we provide our counselor for the birth mother for the remainder of the pregnancy and for another year post-birth. The post-birth counseling is critical in order for her to be able to succeed, get back on her feet, and go on with her life.
That's amazing. All that, I'm not saying that it doesn't need to be done, but we do that for adoption. However, a young girl can go into an abortion mill and abort her baby the same day.
I know. I cannot tell you how many birth mothers have come to me that have previously had an abortion that never gotten over it. I met with one last week that at 5 months aborted in New Jersey on one of these 2-day processes, and she just said it was awful. She'd never gotten over it and really caused her life to spiral downward and getting her in the position where she's in. And so she's placing this child for adoption because of that.
Do you place babies with single parent?
If that's what a birth mother wants to do, but that is unusual for us. Most birth mothers want a mother and a father because most of them didn't have that. And so that is a lot of the reasons for the situation that they find themselves in. And so they really want a mom and a dad.
Do they ever ask if what you think that their child will think of them by placing their baby for adoption?
All the time. And adoptive parents these days go through a lot in order to get to be adoptive parents. And one of the things that they do, and why I like working with Christian adoption consultants so much, is that they require these seminars for their families to go through about open adoption, about how to develop a relationship with your birth mother. And one of the classes that they take is how to explain and when to explain to your child that they were adopted in a caring, loving manner. And then birth mothers, we have a book that we use with birth mothers called When You Wonder, and it's a scrapbook that they put together during the pregnancy. And I mean, they can do it after the birth too and give it to us. And so, because when the child's told, they're going to wonder, who was she? What was she like? And the family will present the child with this scrapbook, pictures of herself, a letter to the child. And so that's how they find out about their birth mom.
Can a birth mother under the age of 18 place their baby?
They can at 15. Without parental consent. However, I won't do that. I require if it's a teenager like that that's living at home, I require the parents to come in as well, receive counseling. I require the child to receive additional counseling to make sure that they understand the decision-making process. So we put in a few extra steps, but Florida law allows you to do it at 15.
Now, if someone contacts you and they aren't a resident of Florida?
Well, in order for us to be able to accommodate them, they have to deliver the baby in Florida. They have to be a Florida resident in order for Florida law to apply. There are ways to do it. It becomes complicated, what you have to do is you wind up hiring an attorney in the state where they are, and they have to make an election to proceed under Florida law as opposed to the law of their state.
Interesting. Now, does the birth parents have any contact with the adoptive parents prior to birth?
Yes. What happens is once they pick the family through looking at a profile book, a book about the family and pictures of themselves and their homes and children, pets, and so on. And then we set up a phone call between the adoptive parents and the birth mother. It's not until after that phone call that they select. And then they have a phone number that they communicate by texting or phone calls throughout the pregnancy. I want them to bond. I require all of our adoptive parents to travel to Florida at least once prior to the birth and meet the birth mother, go to lunch or dinner or something like that. You don't want to meet somebody face to face when you're in labor.
No, I would imagine not. And if the birth parents do not want to meet the adoptive parents, then that would be more of a closed adoption?
Yes.
Very good. Well, we are speaking today with Brian Kelly at Shortstein and Kelly. We're talking about adoption. We're going to take a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.
Hello, this is Brian Kelly. I'm an adoption attorney with Shortstein and Kelly. And if you are interested in adopting a child, or if you are pregnant and don't know where to turn, we can help you. The first step would be to give us a call at 348-6400 or check out our website at adoption-usa.com. Adoption-usa.com. Thanks, and I know we can help you.
Hi, this is Brad Straley with Jacksonville For Life. Today we're speaking with Brian Kelly, law firm of Shortstein and Kelly, and we're talking about adoptions. Brian, you were talking about the birth parents. They have an opportunity to have what's called an open adoption. What kind of information can they receive about their child that the adoptive parents will provide them on a regular basis?
Well, what we do is we have a list of requirements for adoptive parents that they must agree to as far as contact goes, and that's phone, text, email communication with the birth mother throughout the pregnancy and a minimum of 6 months after birth. And then they are required to provide pictures and updates when the baby's 2 weeks old, then quarterly the first year, annually after that. And then the child can find their birth parent under Florida law. Florida has something called the Florida Adoption Reunion Registry when they turn 18, and then they can find each other. In addition to that, then we ask adoptive parents, in addition to these minimal requirements, will you also agree to, and then we ask about contact for a year, 5 years, 10 years, 18 years. We provide additional pictures and updates for milestones, holidays, and so on. So when I meet with a birth mother, I'm able to tell her, here's how open this family is. And I encourage birth mothers to pick more open families as opposed to a birth mother, because they change their mind all the time. Okay. They come in and say, I just don't know how much I want to get to know them. And then they change their mind. Mm-hmm. But if they have picked a family that's not as open, they're not going to change their mind. Right. But, if the birth mother changes her mind and she's picked a more open family, it all works out great.
Good. Earlier you had said that the advisors are women. How does that work with the young, I'm presuming the young birth family that comes in?
Consultants. Yeah, adoption consultants, an adoption consultant like Christian Adoption Consultant, they get cases from more than just me. They get cases. So having an adoption consultant really helps adoptive parents because they can hold their hand. Now, there's a lot of hand holding that needs to go on when you go through an adoption. It becomes very stressful, especially at the end. And so having an adoption consultant that is familiar with that and has experience with that is a great help to adoptive parents, as opposed to just having us. We got a lot of legal work to do. We got a lot of stuff to do, and we try to hold hands as best we can, but it's better to have a permanent hand holder, standing by. They really help out a lot.
Sure. So if a birth family is listening, or an adoptive family is listening, or a potential adoptive family, how can they reach your office?
They can call us at 904-348-6400. They can find us on the web at adoption-usa.com.
What is the difference, in your opinion, between an adoption agency and an adoption attorney?
Well, with an agency, adoptive parents would go through the agency. A lot of times they're limited. Birth mothers are limited to families that have also gone to that particular agency. Adoption agencies do a wonderful job, but then the adoptive parents are going to hire an agency and then hire a lawyer as well, or the agency will have to hire a lawyer for them to do the legal end of it. So Florida law allows an attorney to be the adoption entity as well as an agency can be the adoption entity. There's still a few states that require an agency to be involved, but they are getting fewer and farther between.
You had said earlier, Brian, about the financial assistance that a birth mother can receive. Can you go over those one more time? Because to me, it's amazing that really strangers are going to sit there and do all this with you and for you for a pretty good amount of time.
Yeah, and that's the driving factor in the different cost of adoption. How much financial assistance is the birth mother going to need? Obviously, one that's earlier along in the pregnancy is going to have a bigger budget because she's going to be matched for longer, as opposed to someone that, and this happens all the time, where a birth mother will call me from the hospital. She's already delivered. And those are fun phone calls to make to adoptive parents. We try to reserve those to folks that have had a disappointment. But a perfect example of that is I was working with a family out of the Daytona office, and they had a horrible fall through. They had been matched with the birth mother for 5 months. We're supposed to pick her up to take her to the hospital for her to have her C-section, and she fled. And they were the most wonderful adoptive parents I have ever met. They came into my office, and I was not looking forward to this meeting. And they said, you know what, as difficult as this news was for us to hear, and it has been just horrible, and we are shattered. But we know that had to be just as hard for you to tell us. And so we have prayed about this, and we're going to look at it like, well, at least we were able to provide her support for 5 years so that she was able to deliver a healthy child. And I said, I'm getting these people a baby. And so, sure enough, a couple of weeks later, somebody calls from a hospital here, had a baby, perfect situation. Birth mother had prenatal care, no drugs or alcohol. The baby was wonderful, and I got to call them, and that's fun.
That is a good ending. How much contact does the birth mother usually have with her baby before placement?
Well, it depends. I mean, what happens is I encourage birth mothers at the hospital to spend time with the adoptive parents and the baby. Most hospitals today have gotten real progressive when it comes to adoption. All the hospitals around here, for the most part, if they have room, will give the adoptive parents a room right on the same floor with the birth mother. Wow. And so a lot of times the birth mother will spend time alone with the baby and then want to get some rest, and the baby will room in with the adoptive parents. It's come a long way for hospitals, because they used to be all, they hear adoption and legal, and they all get kind of hinky, they're worried about this could go wrong or that could go wrong, but it's changed, and it's changed for the better.
It sounds it. After that great story you just shared, are there times where the birth mother changes her mind?
Yes. Yeah, that's part of the process that they have to understand. Not very much. We run about between 90 and 95% of, we spend a lot of time with the matching. That is the critical part of any adoption plan, putting the right three people together. If you do that, like I tell birth mothers, I hope you like me, I hope I answer all your questions and we get along great, but I'm not taking the baby home. I'm done taking babies home. You're going to have to really bond with these folks and get to know them and understand that they're going to be taking care of your baby, not me. I'm going to take care of you, and I'm going to get you through this, but my baby days are over.
I can appreciate that. In the last few minutes that we have, I want to talk about the adoptive parents, and we talked to, the heartbreak of them, the birth mother changing the mind. After the adoptive parents that have paid up to that point, do they get any kind of refund or?
All of our legal fees, we don't take any fee for all the work that happens during the course of the pregnancy. We charge flat fees after successful placement. So when a family comes to us, we tell them, here's the at-risk number, and here's how much it will probably cost when we're all said and done. And the at-risk number is made up of birth mother living expenses. And so it's going to vary. At that second meeting I was telling you about, I go through an extensive budget-making process with the birth mother and tell her what her budget's going to be. Here's how much your rent's going to be. Here's how much this is going to be. Here's how much food you're going to need. And then put it in a formula, figuring out how much time till she delivers plus the 6 weeks of recuperation, and that's it.
What's that normally, ballpark?
The Florida law requires up to $5,000 they can receive in birth mother living expenses without a judge getting involved. After $5,000 is exceeded, which most of them are, then a court has to enter an order approving the cost for living expenses. So I have to get an order from a judge, and it runs anywhere from like the one that calls from the hospital. Those aren't very much, but they can be $12,000-$15,000.
How can we do a better job promoting adoption?
That's a great question. Just getting the word out. Domestic adoption, the beauty of it is you just get to know everything about the birth parent. You get to know all about where your child's coming from. I mean, international adoptions, you don't get that. You get a guarantee you're going to get a baby, but you have no idea about the health and what kind of prenatal care, if any, that the birth mother receives. So people need to understand that a domestic adoption can be a wonderful experience.
It sounds it. It sounds it for everyone involved, including the baby. Brian, if someone's just tuning in, they want to learn more about how to do one of the different kind of adoptions, or someone wants to get on that, maybe a list for being adoptive parents, how's the best way for them to reach you guys?
Well, the best way would be to go to our website, adoption-usa.com, adoption-usa.com, and there is a ton of information there on what you need to do in order to get to be adoptive parents. The first thing they have to do is get a home study, and if they want to contact us at 348-6400, I can provide them with the name of a social worker that can do the home study process. It's an extensive process, and it takes time. There's a lot of things that go into that process: criminal background investigations, physicals, parenting classes, adoption seminars. It takes a long period of time. They have to get through that first, and then we'll meet with them and make sure they understand what kind of cases they're probably going to be presented with. So we like to tell folks that if we don't have you a baby within a year, then somebody wasn't being honest at the beginning about what they're open to.
Well, I hate to interrupt, but you are out of time. Can't thank you enough for joining us today and for all you do to promote a culture of life. I'd like to thank the station for being faithful to his word in this opportunity today. And thank you for listening. For more information about pro-life efforts, please visit us at jacksonvilleforlife.org. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And until next time, do something, save babies in Jacksonville.